Sounds Good evening. Welcome to episode 20 of True Talks Live. This is a live stream talk show series to provide new perspectives for project management. This show is co-sponsored by PMI Southern Maryland and PMI WDC. It was conceived and is produced by our own Harry Zolkauer as an entertaining and informative format to provide new perspectives and also PDUs to project managers. My name is Beth May, and I am your MC for tonight. Please note that tonight's show is being recorded and will be available later on YouTube. Our topic for tonight is project managers as citizens. Now, you may have heard of PMI's Citizen Developer Program, where project managers without software development skills can learn to develop software apps. This has nothing to do with that. Tonight, we'll be talking about citizenship in the truest sense of the word, from the perspective of a philosopher. I'm particularly excited about this topic tonight because it wasn't motivated just by considering the needs of project managers. It was motivated by considering our needs as human beings. I believe we can all benefit from some reminders of what it means to be a good citizen and to encourage good citizenship in our world, within our organizations, and with our teams. Before I introduce our host and his guests, I'd like to introduce you to a new member of our True Talks team. Marta Leva has joined our team as our Director of Communications. Marta created our new show logo and has been working behind the scenes to help spread the word about this episode well in advance of tonight's airing. She is talented and dedicated, and we love her enthusiasm. I'd also like to acknowledge our producer, Dan Stay. Dan is the man behind the camera, so to speak, making show business magic. Dan will also be monitoring the YouTube chat for your questions and comments. Our True Talks host, once again, is Kendall Lott. Kendall is still the current president of PMI WDC and the CEO and president of Empowered Strategies. He is also the host of the podcast PM Point of View and co-founder and chairman of the board for the nonprofit Project Management for Change, which is near and dear to my heart. Kendall has hosted this show since its inception more than 2 years ago. Kendall has two guests tonight, Chiara Blangini and Serena Arcari. Chiara Blangini has spent many years as a postdoctoral researcher and lecturer in ancient philosophy at the University of Pavia in Italy. She is also literate in ancient Greek. That must have been helpful when she researched Aristotle's De Anima. Chiara has delved into such questions as how to define the soul and what is happiness. Chiara deeply believes that the tech sector could benefit from incorporating ethical considerations and a human-centered perspective in both design and governance, After researching Aristotelian logic for so many years, she cannot live without structure and organization, skills that will serve her well in her new role as a technology project manager. Serena Arcari is a return guest, having been with us before, both in February 2022 and when we were live at the Delaware, Maryland, Virginia Project Management Symposium at the Army Navy Country Club in September 2022. That was very exciting, being in person. Serena is the founder and CEO of Arcari Solutions LLC and is an award-winning transformation executive and leadership coach for C-suite and rising executives. And as a member of PMI's Global Board of Directors, a global advisor for women leaders of the world, and an executive producer of the documentary film, There's Got to Be More to Life, Serena has some great perspectives to share with us on citizenship. Kendall, take it away.
Hey, Beth. Oh, I'm still trying to find where we are on the screen here. Here we go. Thank you for the introduction there and for introducing the topic for you. You know, I was thinking when you said that, I wouldn't be so sure we're not going to get to citizen developer just yet. I'm just saying. We might work our way right around because that's the nature of philosophy, is that we get to go round and round and round and find different parts that matter to us. But, you know, team, it's not often you get to talk about your soul and being a project manager, because I know people have complained of project managers of having no soul. So because they're like, you again, asking me to do what again? And that's where we arrive sometimes. But Beth, have you had any background in the context of citizenship and being a project manager yourself?
Oh, wow.
Either by study or experience? How do you perceive it?
You could have prepared me for that question. Well, first I'll start by saying, on the note about PMs not having any soul, I will tell you that I did start my career as a computer engineer, and my husband, who's also a computer engineer and a Star Wars fan, likes to say that I've turned to the dark side. But project management, the dark side at all. And in fact, I gave a keynote speech about how positivity can be used as a business strategy, and in particular, how project managers can use positivity to get better outcomes, better project outcomes. So I think that that is definitely related to the idea of citizenship in project management.
Yeah, we'll see how that works out. But I'm also thinking that PIMDOS plays a role in this somehow. I'm just thinking that somehow using our skills to apply in our own communities might be meaningful. But anyway, you're apparently are not on brand. So with that, Dan, please get rid of her. Take her off. Time for you to be hooked off the stage. There we go. So team, you do need to know there will be another Project Management Day of Service, and it is about us acting in our communities, which may or may not be related to citizenship. We're about to find out what the ancients had to say about that. So with that, I want to bring up Chiara. Chiara, are you out there? Come on out on stage from the green room. There she is. I'm told we may have a bad connection here. We may be lucky to keep you online there for a little bit. So I see you, and you're in the red room, it looks like. How are you this evening, Chiara?
Doing well. Very happy to chat with you.
Question for you. Would you please say to me slowly your last name?
Yes, that would be Blengini. I know it's tricky.
Blengini. I kept wanting to say Blegnini, but it's Blengini. Blengini. I apologize for my bad accent there for that. So here we were with someone who actually has studied deeply in a space, and then we'll get to talk the PM version of this, the True Talks part, in a little bit. So right now you're going to tell us the general ideas, but I did want to ask then, just broadly, what is citizenship? We said we thought it was important, and it was a great way to talk about it. Beth has introduced it as a study of the soul, or at least a reference to it. We're hitting on happiness in there as well, but what is it? What is citizenship? And we're going to get to why is it relevant to us, just generally.
Yeah, so this is actually a very broad question, and having a background in philosophy, I'm obsessed with definitions. So we philosophers, we were obsessed with understanding the reason why and the what it is of any concept. So, but when you start asking what is citizenship, then you realize it's not easy to answer that question. So, basically, the main idea is if you look at, I've looked at some definitions online, and if you look at the Wikipedia definition, good citizenship is when one is considered to properly fulfill their role as a citizen. And well, thank you very much, because this is a sort of definition that begs the question, right? So now we have to ask what it is to be a citizen. And there are many different facets to that. So there is responsibility. So being a responsible citizen, like being part on your community by, I don't know, donating blood or improving your neighboring community, or even a more justice-oriented side, like reading newspaper and assessing what's going on in the world, trying to go beyond the surface causes. So there are many different facets to the concept of citizenship, law, politics, society, and even a more the identity question. So in the most general sense, citizenship means belonging to a society. And then we can specify that as having a legal status and a relationship, a juridical relationship within that society, as a relationship that links you as an individual to the state you belong to. But the juridical and political dimension is not at all the end of what you can say about citizenship, right?
Yep, and I think we're going to get into some of the classics on this, but I did hear some new things there for me that's interesting that ties to my understanding of PMs, because in the end, we're going to walk into PMs. That's where we're going to reside here today eventually. But I heard something about this idea of being responsible inside your community, and I imagine now we could get into definitions of community, which communities we mean in what context. But I will say I can go broadly with this and get away with it without having read the original Greek, I believe, which is this is something about us in relationship to others. And PMs definitely can try to peer off of that. Am I good with that? Like we are identifying this topic in the context of us, in the context of others.
Yeah, and you really put your finger on the main point, because, well, I don't want to lecture anyone here, of course, but citizenship is something that we should really take very seriously. And because we, in modern times, we tend to take it for granted. It's something that belongs to us. We are used to being citizens, but we have to remember that citizenship was not always there. So this was not always the case. And citizenship has a very precise place and date of birth. And this is in ancient Greece, like many other things in our Western society. And actually, the concept of citizenship was born because the ancient Greek polis, with a little forward is necessary here, so we don't have to think as ancient Greece is organized like a modern state, like it is today. So ancient Greece was a collection of different city-states, which were sort of miniature nations, and they were autonomous, and they needed a way to distinguish themselves from the others. So the birth, the cradle of the concept of citizenship is actually in the need to distinguish us from them. And for the Greeks, it was to distinguish them as citizens from the barbarians. And the barbarians are, like the word itself says, the barbarians are those people who say barbar, so who don't speak Greek, who live somewhere else, who have different traditions, different religions, and a different language. That was a very deep identity reason for the Greeks. So belonging to a polis, to a city-state, was not only belonging to a community, it was part and parcel of the identity of a Greek individual in the past. So so of course, being a citizen, it entails many different things. So not only being part of the community, but you had certain duties. You had to take part in the assemblies, and you also had some not only rights but also duties like taxation. But at the core,
Oh, hold on. Do I have you back? You there? Do I gotcha?
Yes.
Can you hear? Yeah, I'm perfect. No, so I had a question with that, with what you just said. I heard a number of things in there that made me think again about PMs, because the second part we talked about in the context of others, and you were talking juridical about who has rights in some part, and that's the part that, as you said, don't take for granted. But the other part was that it's about identity. It's in the context of others, but it's about our identity, and it comes with some concept that there must be duties, rights. You hit the famous ba 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 ba. That must be barbarians, right? The people who babble. But in our context, it's about knowing the language that we have to use for our discipline. And we are citizens of our discipline in a certain sense. So I'm imagining this concept can be used in the sense of the different ways we have identity and sub-communities, communities and parts of communities. And then how we participate in the larger community is kind of what I'm imagining here. I'm thinking the things you just described help me think about how to even understand maybe metaphysically my role as a PM. I have this other identity. I have rights in a sense when I'm given a certain role to perform and work, and I have obligations, which PMI actually talks about, and we will get to that with Serena here shortly. So there are duties, but it is about identity some, it sounds like. And that we need to take it seriously. So with that, tell us a little bit about, when we talked before, I was intrigued by the ones that most of the members of our viewing audience are likely to be familiar with somewhat, is Aristotle, Plato, Socratic thought. Tell me a little bit about what the key guys there told us we had to pay attention to.
Yeah, so we have some of the best reflections on citizenship in the ancient thought. And as you mentioned, two of the best examples are actually Plato and Aristotle. And for Plato, I'm going to talk about the Republic, which is one of the most famous and probably most influential dialogues in the whole history of Western thought, I dare say. And it is centered about the idea of justice. And the dialogue tries to answer to the question whether is it always better to be a just person? Is the just person happier? Or is it actually more convenient to be unjust? And Socrates tries to reply to answer this question by actually embarking on a very long detour. So he answers this question by giving an account of a good city, because in a good city, the citizens will be good and just. So it's better, and there is a very interesting metaphor in the Republic whereby Socrates says it's easier to look at justice in the city because, like, it is easier to read a text written in a bigger font. So it's easier to look at the justice in the city than within the single human being. And he sketches this idea of this ideal society, this ideal city-state, the Callipolis so-called, where the society is divided into three classes: the producers, the guardians or defenders, and the philosophers, kings. And this distinction is based on the nature of the individuals. So basically, somebody who is aggressive nature will be great as a guardian, and somebody who's prone to learning and who has the highest rationality will become, after a very long training and education, a philosopher. And philosophers are meant to rule the town because they have the highest rationality. And in this kind of framework, being a good citizen means fulfilling your role by doing what is proper to your nature, what your nature is meant for. So respecting your place within the society, respecting your role. And this is a very deep concept in Greek societies because, for example, many scholars believe that the military formation of the hoplite phalanx was at the beginning, at the root of the development of citizenship, because in order for this kind of formation to be successful, every soldier had to stick to their position within the army. And each soldier's shield would protect the neighboring soldier, and the whole phalanx would move as a whole body. So, and this is very striking for us because our society instead is a very individualistic society, while the Greek society was a very it was a very cohesive society.
Let me take well, let me take you something with that, because I want to apply it even before we get into some other parts of this. This concept of role. We do get assigned roles. So I think while the modern, at least in the modern Western tradition now, or at least in the projects many of us on this show are involved with, we don't have those pre-selected roles or this idea that you have a certain bent towards role, and society does that. But the point being, if we could see a unit where we could see it writ large, written in large letters, the idea underlying it was, it is proper to play your role, and it is respectful to play your role. That is doing the right thing, is when there is a role and you perform it. And that's something project managers should be able to cue into, is that we are to respect our role. One of the things we face often is, in fact, we want people to respect the role we fulfill, but I'm also hearing we need to respect the role that we're in. That's a lesson I'm pulling from that, although the framework is very different. That seems to be something for us to consider. Talk to me, move us forward to Aristotle.
Yes. So it's important, as you were saying, to be a player within the team. So, and Aristotle, so Aristotle is often dialoguing with Plato. So most part of his philosophy is a response to Plato, and citizenship is no exception, because even here, Plato is usually the dreamer, the dreamer and theoretical thinker of ancient philosophy, while Aristotle is more the empirical thinker. So even about citizenship, what he does, he catalogs, he observes the society that is around him, and he is strongly committed to the thought that politics is constrained by the human nature. And for us, this is something that might seem very trivial, but it's actually Aristotle who's the first to tie the two ideas. And this is not something that should be taken for granted, because for other political theories like the social contract theories that begin with Hobbes, the state is not something that is intrinsic to the human nature. So the human being is not a political animal by nature like it is for Aristotle, but the state is the result of a choice, of a conscious choice by the human beings who decide to give away part of their freedom and enter a contract, which is the state, in order to address problems like safety and security within the state. While for Aristotle, a man is by nature a political animal. And this has two main consequences. So the first consequence is that politics cannot be separated from ethics. And I can say something more about that. And the second one is that for Aristotle, citizenship is mainly participation. So politics cannot, and citizen...
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah, so the idea that politics cannot be, and citizenship cannot be separated from ethics is because if a human being is by nature a political animal, also the polis exists by nature. And the goal of the state is, in Greek, is the euzen, meaning to live well. So the state is there to make sure that the people, the citizens, are living a good life. So in order to answer the question, what is a good citizen, we have to answer the question, what is a good man and what is living a good life? So this is very far away from our way of thinking. And another consequence I was mentioning is that for Aristotle, the fact that the man is by nature political means that it is by nature part of a society. So citizenship is conceived as participating in a society. So a citizen is not somebody who stands in front of the state as somebody having rights in front of and against sometimes the state, but is somebody who is a stakeholder in that common good that is the state. So it has responsibilities and he's involved in the state. And this
that may have rolled forward differently by the time we get into some of the more modern Western traditions about the role of the individual rights and the concept of state. However, I picked up something in there that I thought was interesting and that makes me think. We don't know if Aristotle and these other and their ilk are right, but it caused me to think. I heard we choose. There's a design to purpose. We choose to be organized. It's something we choose to do. Now, I think you said in the end, our nature is to get that way, but we choose to enter organizations. We choose to, as you said, give up some of our freedoms to be part of something, right? We are choosing to be part of something. And I think that's something that PMs actually wrestle with a lot. It's hard to be a PM on your own. It is hard to be a PM with just people working for you. You are part of a system and you're part of a method to do things. You also talked about the politics and ethics are bound together to create something, the idea of the good life, ultimately, would be, I think, the best way to be, right? I'm struck by, we cannot do our jobs without a context of ethics because that's how we fulfill our role in part. And then participation, boy, you just called it out for project managers. We're all over the participation. We do not sit back. We choose to engage. So I'm seeing this sense that while our projects and our companies may not be cities, this idea that there is an identity that we choose to be part of, that we do things by design, that purpose actually matters, that we're doing it to improve things and to have a better situation, and that's an individual aspect we have to bring to it when we participate. These are ideas that I think ring to us still, even though our environment is so different. I want to take us to Rome if we get a chance, because if you can give me one thing on it before I bring Serena up, because I have an interest in Rome. In my mind, I know a lot about projects. We still see them standing around in Italy and Spain and Africa and Jordan and Egypt. We see evidence of projects in art, in infrastructure. And I am dying to know how any of this plays into how can we connect philosophy to the ability for people to build so much, organizing so much human labor, and clearly having management practices. Rome's my project hero.
Yeah, the Romans were really masters in that because, as said, in the Greek society, ethics is part and parcel of political participation. So you cannot do without ethics. Ethics is part of life. And this is still true for Rome in one sense, but they were the first to be able to use the concept of citizenship in a strategic way in order to consolidate their power. So even for Rome, the idea of being part of community is very, very important. It's crucial. So even the word itself of res publica is translated as the common thing. So the state is the common good. And again, you cannot separate the individual from his role within the society and within and as a citizen. At the same time, though, as Machiavelli, this is basically the interpretation of Machiavelli of Rome. The Romans have been able to use citizenship in order to have allies between the people they conquered, and they used citizenship as a strategy to consolidate Romans' power and to spread the culture of Romanness, of humanitas. So they would give people citizenship in order to make them part of this common good that was the Roman Empire, and in order to transform also the conquered people into stakeholders in the Romanitas, into the goal, into the project of the Roman Empire. So that was very, very smart, I must say.
I'm going to stop you there because I really appreciate you putting a nice fine point on something we can use there. While that seems very Machiavellian, which has a negative connotation, I think, for many people, PMs, I'm going to challenge you to just consider that you are Romans, because here's how I'm going to interpret. We call that change management. How do I get people who might be naturally resistant to be part of my project? It's about identifying people and offering them roles, responsibility, and identity. It's saying you're part of this thing too. Essentially, what you just described as strategic, I would argue, is what we plan for in change management strategies with our projects, not from conquered peoples, but the idea that I need people who are not naturally linked to me to be an ally. And it's a strategic decision to roll out identity roles, responsibility, etc. So now when I'm doing change management, I'm going to argue it's just good project citizenship. Let's roll with this thing here. So with that,
Yes.
I'm going to put you on pause for a second. We're coming back to you because I got more questions in our 21st century. But in the meantime, I'm going to grab Serena. Were you out there, Serena?
I am.
There she is. Okay, so Serena and I are going to talk. Okay, so before I bring all three of you together, I'm just going to talk with you for a second here, Serena. So what did you've experienced PMI a lot, and they talk a lot of things that we just heard that the ancients spoke to us. So I'm first interested in, what did you hear that was interesting? You're like, that was an aha. I've heard that before already.
I was struck by the transforming the conquered into stakeholders, because I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot there for our profession.
We conquer people.
Well, so one of the former CEOs of PMI, whom I really was a great mentor of mine, taught me that nobody commissions a project to keep everything exactly how it is. So project management is by its nature change management. We are here to change things. The tagline of PMI is making ideas a reality, right? And so we are the Romans. You're correct in that way, I think, in referring to us as a body of people or as a profession. We are here to change the world. One project at a time. And sometimes I think we do have stakeholders who feel like they've been conquered by our projects. They're always the unwilling and in any project. And those are the ones that go into the community, right? We have to win them over. We have to turn them into at least quiet resistors, but hopefully converted. And so that really struck me when Chiara was talking about, the way the Romans transformed the conquered into stakeholders and enveloped them into the state, wanted them to become part of the state. I think the other thing that struck me from the early conversation, I was writing furiously, some great notes, but this idea of that the state exists to foster the good life, on behalf of the citizens, and that it is dedicated to the common good, and that we cannot separate the individual from the common good. And I think there's a lot of resonance there for me, with the way that we practice our profession when we do it at the height of our profession. Some of the largest projects that I had the opportunity to work on as a practitioner were done with public funds and for the public benefit. And I think we're really great examples of that idea that the state can deliver good to the common, to the public, to the common good, to the citizenship, when it's done well. And I think as practitioners, our responsibility in those kinds of projects, or in any project that we're in, is to make sure that we are making the best use of the resources that have been granted to our project and delivering the most value to the stakeholders, whether that's the public or some other entity that have brought us in to get that job done.
I saw it from a discipline perspective, so I appreciate that too. I think there was so much in there because I saw it from the discipline perspective about the idea of doing things by design, participating in our role, and you were talking there about how the use of the for the common good or for the betterment of what we're involved with. I think that's also wrapped up pretty tightly, even in our code of ethics, and what we're supposed to be doing as project managers. I was thinking because you have so much experience with PMI as an institute representing the discipline, building and maturing the discipline, making sure it's seen as effective. How would you see the project manager's role in the context of working in the community? I think there's something about being part of the larger thing. And then there's also an individual part. How does PMI reflect that, or how do you interpret PMI's reflection? For those of us that have chosen to join this organization, to be part of it, how are we good citizens within that, or good stewards within that?
Yeah, oh, wow, this is such a rich topic. It's so sticking with community.
Small bites. And if it's a rich food, if it's a rich dish, let's have a small bite.
It is a rich dish. But, when we stick with the idea of community, there's so many levels, right? If you look at it from the practitioner's perspective, you've been granted, given a project to run, right? You have to create a community on that project team, right? Both with the sort of the nucleus of the team and the people who are actually doing the work, and then the broader sort of, as you ripple out, who are the people that are going to be impacted by the work being done by that project team. So aren't all of those people, we call them stakeholders, right, in our vernacular, but aren't all of those people part of the community around that project? And I loved the comment that ethics is part and parcel of citizenship, and it definitely resonates into our profession. We have our own code of conduct, our own code of ethics that talk about sort of doing the right thing within projects, and that includes how we treat people, how we revere resources, how we ensure value is delivered from the effort that is expended, to make sure that the benefits are realized from the change that we've been asked to make. And so, I keep going back to this idea of the state and citizenship, being connected to the good life, right? I think that the benefit this exchange, that we give up some of our freedom in order to get some benefit that we couldn't achieve on our own as an individual, that we need to stand in that phalanx formation and do our part, both within our profession, within our projects, within the organizations that may employ us. You can ripple out within our profession all the way across the globe. We have 300 chapters where project managers gather all across the globe. In fact, this very week, we were having one of the largest gatherings of project managers on the planet happening in Atlanta. And so, the idea of community and being a citizen of PMI, being a member of PMI, we join this community because we perceive that there is strength in numbers, that there is knowledge to be gained from others practicing our profession in other parts of the world. And that in some ways that may also turn around and become an individual benefit for us in our professional lives, and make us better at getting our job done. And, it's a very virtuous cycle, I think.
I was so much goodness in Atlanta all at one point. The earth will wobble. I don't know what will happen there on the physics side of it. But so let me take it to another place then. I was recently reading the Code of Conduct again, and I was struck. It is our ethical statement, and it includes we should do good things, but we also have to be honest and truthful how we do them. This idea that we properly or authentically represent information to others. To me, that's the role we have chosen, the responsibility that we wear. And I think in that context, it's not a religion, it's an ethics. It's this idea, it more specifically speaking to us in our discipline. And I think of myself as a citizen in that environment. I know it's not really around the polis, although I did live in Indianapolis for a while. So I was part of the polis at one point. But I wanted to ask you, in PMI's perspective, volunteerism. This is taking what we bring as our skills, roles, and abilities to participate back where Chiara was talking about it at the state level, at the city-state level, at the state, nation-state level. We bring to our communities the ability to volunteer because of our skill set. Talk to me about the role and how you see that as tied to citizenship, our discipline, ethics, anything you want there. Volunteerism seems to have mattered in our environment. Beth and I joked about it at the beginning. Not to joke about it, but because it's important to us and we remember that often. Talk to me about volunteerism.
Well, it's hugely important to PMI. I mean, it's just part of our DNA, I think. And I think our profession, we are problem solvers at the core, right? We get to do that all day, every day. And so when we see a problem and we're invited to help solve a problem, we're happy to rush to that problem and bring our skills. And so I think we are in some ways predisposed volunteers However, PMI literally is built on the volunteer idea. And so when I heard Kiara talking about, citizenship comes with obligations, responsibilities, I think that
Yeah.
you would find that, especially within the volunteer core at PMI, which numbers in the tens of thousands, this idea of giving back is important, right? We joined the community, we participated in the activities, we perhaps earned a credential, perhaps took some of the knowledge, took part in some of the networking activities, and somehow we felt like we gained from our participation in the community, and then we also want to return some of that goodness back into the community by advancing the profession, by sharing our knowledge, by mentoring, coaching, leading in some way as volunteers around the globe. And, we have local chapter volunteers all the way up to the global board of directors where I have the privilege to serve now. And, it is exactly why I raised my hand to serve on the board of directors, because of how much I felt my personal career and my team and my projects benefited from what I learned from PMI over the years, and the network of amazing professionals that I have met. So I think that this idea of responsibility, volunteerism is part of that. You talked a little bit earlier about truth telling, and I think that as project professionals, that is one of our sort of highest duties, is to tell the truth as we know it in the moment, because everything changes every day on our projects, but our sponsors need to rely on our word. And even when it's difficult news, right? Bad news doesn't get better with age. So, we have to have the courage, the strength to bring the bad news, and hopefully a couple of solutions. But regardless, we can't keep saying our projects are green when they're not. Right. So we have to have the courage to tell the truth. And that, I think that's part of responsibility, right? Responsibility to the people who are paying for that project and who are depending on the value that's supposed to be delivered by that project.
The overall is better if we were all fulfilling our roles as people understood the roles in the context we're in. And I believe the executives expect us to tell the truth. Where it gets confounding is when there are people who don't expect you to tell the truth. I need this to be green. We can always take out our crayons and make it green.
True.
And that might not be the right answer.
And sometimes there's a legitimate path to green if you're willing to make some sacrifices, right? We can get to green if we're going to cut the scope in half. Yeah. We can get to green.
We can get to green. You opened another door for me that I had never thought about in philosophy. So I want to actually challenge this or ask this question. I hadn't even thought into something you just said. So I'd like to bring Kiara back on to join us so we can have you two hash this out a little bit. Kiara, she said something interesting to me there. She talked about something we talk about a lot, about this idea of giving back. Citizens do it. People of any organization often provide their time and their labor to others. As part of our PMI-ness that we do, we care about that. Some of us have pushed forward in it. A lot of us on this call are volunteering tonight, for example, because we think it's important. Harry, shout out to Harry as an officer of the chapter who chose to join an organization to provide value to others that he may or may not get himself. Right? We give more to others. However, when Serena said that, I use those words a lot, giving back, it implies we took something. So I'm intrigued. In the world of the ancients, how would they have described either volunteerism, the idea that besides this role I have, I also have this responsibility to give because I took? And I'm a go.
Yes, so this is definitely an idea that is there in the ancient society. So education was considered one of the most important endeavors of the state, because if you are part of the community and you have, so for Aristotle, if you have been able to become a good human being and for him it means to have developed the virtues. It means that you had the right training and right education within your community. And both the state and your parents are responsible for that, because for Aristotle, you learn through examples. So it's by watching other people that you become also a virtuous man, a good man. So education for Aristotle needs to be a common endeavor. It is to be state-based, and this is a very big novelty in the ancient Greek world, because education was private. And regarding this idea of giving back, actually Plato is also very interesting, because this idea of the philosopher king is actually like a condemnation for the philosophers themselves. Because if you're a true philosopher, you would just want to learn and study all day. You don't want to go and mingle into society. You just want to be there with your books and be left alone. So there is a very funny and interesting passage in the Republic where he says that we have to really drag the philosophers and oblige them to take care of the society, because even if they wouldn't want to, they're the best candidates for that. And it's part of their role within the society. And they've been able to become philosophers because they've been able to enjoy the training given by the society. So now they have to give back, and they have to rule, because they are the people who are the most qualified for ruling well. So this is, for both Aristotle and Plato, it's a very important concept. Yeah.
So, Serena, it turns out you're Platonic, because your next sentence was, and it's because I got this training from society. So it turns out you're highly Platonic. And then I just made a connection that'll be completely wrong according to our ancient Greek philosopher here. But somebody asked the question, should Socrates have taken the poison?
That's right. From the Greek perspective, yes, because he was doing his own duty, and he was faithful to that till the end. So it was part of the society. The society decided that that was the right thing to do. He did it.
The hook I remember from it, just when you had that comment, was when he is challenged, as I remember it from 40 years ago, when he was challenged on, you don't have to actually do this. We can get you out of here. His comment was something to the effect of, I spent 80 years taking from this society. They've chosen these rules. I played by the rules. They didn't go for me this time. They didn't break my way. I have a duty to still follow through, because I was a taker, because I was part of this thing that mattered so much. So I think this idea, perhaps whether or not he would, well, actually he was guilty, but whether that was a relevant guilt or not might be an interesting question. But at any rate, we do participate in something, and there are consequences of that participation. And I think that's a challenge for us to do well, why we don't pick up our crayons and color it green, why we say there has to be a path to make it better. If it's red on the dashboard, it's red. But that's an interesting little side trip there. But I do want to take now to the 21st century. We touched on a little bit around the idea. You took citizenship to the strategic or the weaponized form that the Romans took, but there they were building big projects, and here we are building big projects and investigating in new technologies. Chiara, can you talk how you're seeing the application of citizenship and the ethical structures around it in the face of very modern technologies that seem to challenge how we interact as citizens? Is there a way for you to update our thinking on that for a big jump into a new space with 12 minutes to go?
Yes, so we're really witnessing a period of momentous transformations of the world in general and for citizenship in particular, because we've seen that citizenship is a very fluid concept. It's changed and it evolves depending on the society it applies to. And nowadays the technologies are creating big challenges and big opportunities for citizenship, like dual nationality, the citizenship for sale programs, initiatives of e-government, e-voting, and also mobility has changed because of technology. And this means that we have e-border. We have it's easier to move across borders, like here in Europe, but this has also created the refugee crisis. So how do we deal with that? So there are so many challenges that are emerging because of the new technologies, and also our society is becoming a society based on data. So this, of course, increases the efficiency of the administration, the bureaucracy, but also poses a threat to personal privacy and to the freedom and to the privacy of the individual. And also another new frontier for citizenship is also all the possibilities made available by the DNA advances and the assisted reproduction technologies, because how do we classify these new individuals that are born in this way? And DNA allows us actually to control people, to have their data, and there's a sort of surveillance society. So there are a lot of new opportunities and new challenges. So the access to technology is both somehow making engagement in the society, in politics easier, but it's also creating a divide. People who have access to technologies and people who don't. So there's a lot going on these days. The concept of citizenship is changing. We need to find a new concept of citizenship, and that's why I think technology is not enough. Technology is a mean, and it's a very powerful mean, but because of it opening such new horizons, we really need, there's a lot of thinking to be done. So philosophers are there for that, and project managers also have a huge role, because they are those people who build a bridge between the present and the future. They are those people who make it possible, right? So we need all disciplines to interact.
Well, Serena, from the PM discipline, then how do you see that with the technology? I mean, I think everything we just heard is true. What is it that PMI addresses in this?
Well, I think that first and foremost, we are concerned with this idea of ethics, and I love this. I mean, it's a really relevant question for right now, right? Who are the citizens and who are the barbarians? Right, it morphs in every single conversation. I mean, we start talking about AI.
The engineers are the barbarians. You didn't mean to imply the engineers are barbarians.
I think it depends on your perspective, Kendall. It just depends on where you're. Well, and the engineers probably say the same about us. So, I think that's the thing that we have to really appreciate as professionals, is that there are a million different perspectives on the same problem, and we have to appreciate that in this time, right? Maybe it was more black and white in the ancient times, where you could clearly see who was a citizen and who was, quote unquote, a barbarian. But I think that we're getting to the point where we really need to begin to see each other as humans, first and foremost, and go from that perspective forward together. And then these are big questions to be answered. What is going to deliver public benefit? What is going to be for the greater good? How do we come to agreement on these things? And I think that, PMI right now is looking at what's going to be the impact to the profession, as every profession is, I think, with all the technological advances that are coming at us so quickly. Our perspective as an organization is that this is going to be a real enabler for the humans that are practicing our profession. We feel that there will always be that human element in what we do. And there's a lot of science that goes into, that complements the art of project management. And the technology is increasingly helpful in that part of our profession. We've released a new sort of education piece around generative AI, so that our practitioners can stay abreast of how this is coming at them professionally. There's going to be a lot of conversation on this topic in Atlanta. I am really looking forward to getting down there and hearing some of it, because we are evolving it. We are evolving it as practitioners. We're evolving it as PMI. We were doing our best to stay out in front of it. And it's going to be up to the individuals and the project teams around the globe to figure out how they can best leverage some of these technologies for the greater good.
Yeah, I think the last comment there, for the greater good, is the key that we've heard philosophers say is important. And I think it's something that we're supposed to feel, and we do feel often as project managers. It's not just how can we do it better. And I personally believe, I observe people getting lost in the how, because that's what we train to a lot. How can I do this project well? but it's also
Mhm.
how it's a meaningful and valuable thing to have produced. Although we may not always be those decision makers, I think that's where our participation is. So I'm going to do something a little bit different here. Kiara, I'm put you a little bit on the spot, so it's okay if you need a beat to think about it. But based on our previous discussion, my understanding, and you can correct me as needed here, is you're kind of new to this PM environment, having come from your academic environment and looking at the world of business. You've lived in many countries, you've studied in a lot of different places. So you are a world citizen, in my mind anyway, from where you've come.
Yeah.
As you are looking, and even what you heard today, what you've read, what you've talked with Harry and others about the project management space, what questions do you have as someone steeped in the knowledge of how to belong, how to design to be belong, how to be part of something and have roles and responsibilities? What questions do you have for Serena as someone who's well steeped in project management and the institute that represents the discipline? What challenge do you see for project managers in this space based on your background as you cross that river into our land?
Yeah, so there are many questions because it's a totally new adventure for me. And I think first of all, I think it's important to, in order to be part of a new community, I love languages. So the first approach that I would go for is trying to learn the language, so the vocabulary, which is a totally different vocabulary, right? And then my question is how to be able. So I've learned a lot from our discussions tonight, and I actually found a lot of similarities with my background and with the philosopher's idea that ethics is important. But so how can you embed ethical considerations within a project? How do you do that? How can you be an ethical project manager? Is it only by giving back and being volunteer, or can you really bring it into your day-to-day practice?
Aha.
Great question. Great
That
question.
may be our new symposium question next year.
I think you could build a whole symposium around this.
Symposium. Talk about a callback.
Yeah, well, let's do it. Let's do it. That was so much fun last year. I think we could do a whole session on this. But just quickly, because I know we're running out of time. Ethics, even on a global scale, right? We go back to this idea: who's a citizen, who's a barbarian. I'm an American passport holder. I grew up all over the world. I've practiced primarily my profession in this country, but now I serve a global organization of project managers from all over the place. And what's considered ethical project management behavior in the United States could be very, very different. Even in the truth-telling part, Kendall, we tend to be kind of blunt and direct here in the United States. And so telling the truth can be, a little bit, feel a little brutal to some other cultures around the world. And so, as a representative of our members globally, it's been very important for me to try to get much more deeply into what does ethics mean in various different parts of the world, and not always have my U.S. sunglasses on, looking at certain project behaviors that are commonplace in other places that we just, especially in our government funded programs, would never be able to take on here. And so I think it's really important. Open-mindedness, I guess, is probably open-heartedness, open-mindedness. I think Kiara is probably one of the first tenets of being a great project manager these days. You can't assume that your way will work everywhere. And almost every project that we're called to work on is multinational now.
And I think you just hit something for me that was important, and how I was trying to interpret some of your discussion earlier, Kiara, was this. I believe as project managers, we are citizens of a different space. Well, all disciplines have this opportunity. This is the one we're choosing to talk about tonight. And you just put your finger on it very specifically. As citizens of nations, which is what the ancients talked about, but the generic ideas that cause them to frame it, for us, our discipline is something that may have an ethical rule that is different, that is not nation state, not bound by culture and nation state entirely, although it smacks a lot of a Western tradition typically. But I think the ethics is a different community, a different kind of citizenship that we engage with, which is we choose to be in a different fellowship of doers, as Teddy Roosevelt would say. There's something about how we choose to show up and act that's different, that may supersede these things. And that's the open-mindedness that we may need to be keeping there. So all ethics, there we go, are culturally informed to some extent. I think we choose a culture here of how we interact and the techniques we choose to use and why we use them the way we do. Well, it's going to be very exciting to see what you guys come up with in Atlanta. And the callback to symposium is because, as I remember, the idea of a symposium was you sit and talk about all the really great ideas and eat. If I'm not mistaken, that's what they did, is they sat around and ate for 7 hours and talked to each other about it. So I'm all about showing up for one of those classes anytime, anywhere, all the time. So with that, I think we're going to have to wrap up here tonight. Myself feel like we did this with some purpose. I've taken pleasure. I fulfilled my role, so I have eudaimonia. I'm very happy. And I hope you guys, by your smiles, at least you're charmed. So we'll go with that. With that, I will turn it over to Beth. Beth, take us home.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, fellow citizen project managers, what did you think of tonight's show? Let us know by commenting in the YouTube comment section. And you can now email us at livetruetalks@gmail.com. That's three words run together, livetruetalks@gmail.com. We'd also like to hear from you about what topics you'd like to see in future episodes of True Talks Live. We have a few announcements from the chapters before we wrapped up, but before we show those slides, this is not on the slides. And Serena said at one point, we are here to change the world one project at a time. And I don't even think she was conscious of the fact that she was quoting the tagline of Project Management for Change, changing the world one project at a time. On November 2nd, which is International Project Management Day, Project Management for Change will be posting information to social media about our 10th annual DC Regional Project Management Day of Service, which is scheduled for February 17th. This will be your chance to exercise your responsibility as a citizen of the project management community and as a citizen of the local community where you live, if you're a PM in the DC region, because this will be our first in-person event since 2020. And I hope you will watch for that communication on November 2nd and register when registration is open and join us and be part of our community and give back. Now we're ready for our slides on the announcements from our two sponsoring chapters. PMI Southern Maryland has 4 upcoming events they would like to share with you tonight. A free training webinar on November 8th called Project Online is Sunsetting, How to Prepare for the Future of Project Technology. That's at 2 p.m. on November 8th. Register before 4 p.m. on the 7th. A fun event on the 9th, use your project management skills to solve the escape room challenge at Arundel Mills Mall in Hanover, Maryland. There will be food, beverages, and a PDU. Register before 11 p.m. on October 30th. The chapter's annual membership meeting will be on December 11th at the University of Maryland College Park campus. And the next book club meeting will be on December 12th. The book is The Self-Driving Project, Using Artificial Intelligence to Deliver Project Success by Paul Boudreau, a prior guest on our show. Register by 11:59 p.m. on December 11th. We know that PMI WDC is the biggest PMI chapter, and they have 7 events to share tonight. A networking event called Strike It Big, Project Manager Power Play. Where else? At Bowl America in Fairfax, Virginia. That's on November 4th at 1 p.m. Their next book club meeting will be on November 8th. The book is Unreasonable Hospitality, The Remarkable Power of Giving People More Than They Expect, by Will Guidera. This is a virtual event at 5 p.m. A C3 event on November 9th called Demystifying AI Projects, Lessons from the Practitioners. This is a hybrid event at 11:30 a.m. on Zoom and also at the Google office in Reston, Virginia. Registration is required. The chapter's annual membership meeting will be on November 9th at 6 p.m. and will feature Carl Pritchard. This is happening at Nobilis in Reston, and there will be an ice skating event on December 2nd. Details are TBD as of yet, but will be posted to the website. The next in-person membership orientation will be on December 6th at Nobilis in Reston at 5:30 p.m. And there will be another book club meeting on December 13th to discuss the book Meetings That Get Results by Brian Tracy. That will be a virtual event at 5 p.m. Finally, don't forget to submit your PDU claim for tonight. Thank you and good night.